How you going? In this video, I'm going to show you how you can get rid of demons. How you can just squish it like a fly so that it won't torture you anymore. Imagine for a moment, you're casually walking and discovering life around you. But you don't know about the dangers that are waiting for you, and they just wait to get their stinky hands on you and start messing up your life.
Please don't do this. Oh my God. I don't want this.
You're mine. And you just accepted this new relationship and it becomes a part of your life.
What are you doing there? Come on, we have to go
But you secretly hope that one day it will get bored and leaves you alone. In times passing, it becomes more of a trouble and you're getting fed up with it.
Shut up.
Because it's just messing with your life too much. Ow! 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 You try to get rid of it or escaping from it. But no matter what you're doing, it always has an upper hand to stay with you.
Oh shit. Fuck.
But how do you throw out a demon from your life? You simply try out the things you have never tried before, and eventually one of those things will bring you a victory. Slowly, slowly. Don't make a sound, don't even think, because I can read your thoughts. And when it's least expecting it, smash his head in a chair. End of demon. Welcome to the greatest fucking YouTube video ever. Yeah. Let's get this done. Whoever the guys who are watching this. Let's get this done, dude. Now that you got rid of that demon, there can also be habits or addictions that are also demonic in nature, and they are going to destroy your life if you let them. So how do you get rid of those habits and addictions that are demonic? What even are those self-destructing habits that can turn, mostly they will turn into addictions? They are drugs, smoking, alcohol, pornography addiction, sex addiction, gambling. You know, all of those vices or those little habits that you kind of enjoy them for their dopamine boost and their pleasure boost to feel a little bit happy, but in the long term, they will wear you down and they will absolutely can destroy your life. Let's talk about porn addiction. Let's talk about porn and fapping. I was 14 to 15 years of age when I got into this habit of watching porn and fapping to it. And at the time it was just just natural curiosity of discovering the things that my body could now do is to, have sex and to impregnate a woman. But I got into a habit of watching porn and fapping to it. It was mostly about getting, almost getting high of the good feeling of having an orgasm. And it stayed like this for a while. But I never noticed that how its influence over me grew a bit by bit. I found myself using more of it in every following year. I was not just using it for the pure bliss, for excitement, or for entertainment. I was using it for every time I felt bad, every time I had a negative experience in school or in relationships with girls or whatever. It became this thing to soothe or medicate something that was uncomfortable or that was just painful in my life. I could just turn on some porn and have pleasure, and all of a sudden that bad feeling that was there before, it doesn't mean anything anymore. It was almost like non-existent or non-important while I'm having this or peak pleasure of orgasm at the moment at my own choice. It feels so much more, right to justify the action of choosing pleasure over feeling the negative feeling and trying to do something about that. It's just, I train my brain to push away any kind of negative stuff that I had and to distract myself with pleasure. And then it became worse and worse. But I didn't even notice that. I was just feeling crappy all the time. I was feeling more lonely. I was feeling more emotionally, drained. I was having this. I couldn't think in a straight way. Like I was having this cloud over my mind, or this brain fog that prevented me from thinking sharp and straight, and to live a normal life, to have a focused study, or to do tasks uninterrupted. And while I was feeling more worse and worse every following year, I watched more porn and I fapped even more. And the things that I ended up watching was pretty damn horrible. It just started out with this vanilla thing, and I just escalated to a whole another level of type of porn. I ended up watching some pretty gross fetish things. I'm not going to tell you the things that I just don't want to get triggered, or want to trigger myself again, to trigger those old neural pathways that I have sucked the energy away from. But the point is, it's just like a drug. And you get addicted to it eventually. You want more of it. You want to do it more often. You have to increase the amount or the whatever type of drug that you currently use. You just want more of it because you get bored pretty easily if you do the same thing for a period of time. The the same thing that excites you will not excite you anymore after like a couple of months, and then you have to find a new way to bring back and to induce those feelings that you had at the beginning. That's the pathway to falling in a rat hole, into a rat hole of addiction, where you are doing this more and more, and it compromises your normal life. And that's what happened to me. I was getting worse, and my grades got worse and worse. I was not doing very well socially. I did not have any kind of proper relationships with girls. I didn't have a lot of friends. My social circles were like almost non-existent. I didn't went to any kind of parties. I was more shy, more depressed, more anxious in every following year until the age of 26. From 14 years of age to 26 years of age, I was a huge addict of porn. I watched it every free moment I had, almost multiple hours in every free day off that I had, because I didn't get excited enough for the things that I used to watch. So I had to search for more and more and explore more things that may excite me, and then watch them. And even those, pretty soon they got boring, and I escalated again to even more fetish things. But something happened at that age. I remember I got myself a girl somehow, and we went into apartment. We got naked. We were in the bed, and I had an erectile dysfunction, meaning that my junk wasn't working. I didn't get excited to a naked girl, and I couldn't do anything with her because I was not having an erection. And that's the moment where everything changed for me, because it was so painful and so miserable moment in my life. I fell into this rock bottom moment because I just couldn't believe what was happening. I considered myself to be a relatively healthy and fit guy, and I'm supposed to be healthy. I'm supposed to be working fine in every way, but my thing is not working. And I was thinking, like, what is wrong with me? Do I have this undiscovered disease? Maybe can I ever have kids while I'm like this, or what the hell is wrong with me? Am I going to die soon because my organs are just shutting down one by one? I had these crazy thoughts, of being terminally ill or just dying in a couple of years, because I was panicking so much that one of my organs isn't working properly. And I just, in this moment, it was a very embarrassing moment for sure, but I told her that something is not right. I put on my clothes and just ran away from her and from the apartment. And when I got home, I started thinking many hours after the event that maybe this thing that just happened, maybe it's something to do with the things that I were watching and the things that I were doing with my, thing. maybe it's because I was fapping too much to fetish porn that I only get excited to that, and I don't get excited to a naked woman. There is something wrong with that. So I did the research, read some books, dug into the forums of NoFap or the pages of sexual addiction, porn addiction, everything I did to find the problem to find the solution to my issue, and eventually I found it. All the symptoms that I had, the brain fog, increased depression, erectile dysfunction, loss of motivation, loss of enjoyment over little things in life. It was all because of my addiction to porn. So, but I wanted to talk to you about how to remove that habit. So maybe the nature of how addiction forms is for another video. But now I just want to talk about my journey and how I got rid from this demonic dreaded addiction that almost destroyed my life. So after the research, after the countless books, and after the many trials and errors, I finally found a blueprint that got me free from it. And it's relatively pretty simple. So the first thing obviously is to admit that you are an addict and you have a problem. If you're living in denial, you don't have the will to improve or to fix your life because you haven't admitted yourself and you haven't accepted the fact that the thing you're doing is actually destroying you. So you have to admit that watching porn, I don't care how much you are watching it. Be it one time a week, be it 3 to 5 times a week, it doesn't matter. Eventually you will get into a habit of watching it more and more and just fall into a path of and fall into an addiction. Because once you get used to getting peak pleasure in a push of a couple of buttons, you eventually just want more and more of it. So 1 time a week quickly becomes 2 times a week, and then it becomes 1 time a day, and then it becomes at least 2 times a day. I remember when I was in my beginning phase of the addiction, I got home from school and the first thing I did was to pop up some porn and just get off to it. And the frequency of fapping just increased. I remember I started to jerk off in the shower. I started to jerk off before bedtime. I started to doing it more and more in every free moment that I had, because it was just so. It was so good to forget about my issues and problems and to feel this peak pleasure. It became like a natural tendency for me to fap more often because it just felt so great. And why the hell I wouldn't do this more often? Why I wouldn't do the thing that makes me feel good, right? And if I feel good, then it must be healthy and normal, and just a thing that every guy does. So where was I? So one time a week becomes one time a day, and then it becomes 2 times a day, and then it becomes 2 hours a day, and then it becomes 4 hours a day, and eventually it just gets worse and worse. So that was the first step. The step number one is to document your habit loop. The habit loop is just 3 things. You have a trigger. The trigger is something that initiates the desire, the craving, or the urge to get a reward. In a porn addiction, the trigger is maybe, it can be, you saw a half-naked woman on Instagram and you got this huge urge to have sex or to have a sexual release, but you can't at the moment. So you do this routine of watching porn and just fap to it. And your reward is just an orgasm. And that's it. Your brain almost thinks that you had a real sex, but it's not real. You just watch some pixels on a screen and you wanked off to it. But it's not true. You just watched some pixels on a screen and had sex with your hand. But this is the habit loop of. This was the habit loop of mine and every other porn addict. The trigger saw something sexual, something that's inducing a sexual urge, and then the routine, whatever the routine is, watching porn, watching some nude pictures on another site, whatever, fapping, and then the reward to release an orgasm. So my routine was, I remember the biggest, so my routine was always, it started with a trigger of me seeing something on a computer or on my phone that was sexually stimulating. It was just whatever, a girl who was a girl, and the frequency of fapping just increased. I remember I started to jerk off in the shower. I started to jerk off before bedtime. I started to doing it more and more in every free moment that I had. Because it was just so, it was so good to forget about my issues and problems and to feel this peak pleasure. It became like a natural tendency for me to fap more often because it just felt so great. And why the hell I wouldn't do this more often? Why I wouldn't do the thing that makes me feel good, right? And if I feel good, then it must be healthy and normal and just a thing that every guy does. So one time a week becomes one time a day, and then it becomes 2 times a day, and then it becomes 2 hours a day, and then it becomes 4 hours a day, and eventually it just gets worse and worse. So that was the first step. The step number one is to document your habit loop. The habit loop is just 3 things. You have a trigger. The trigger is something that initiates the desire, the craving, or the urge to get a reward. In a porn addiction, the trigger is maybe, it can be, you saw a half-naked woman on Instagram and you got this huge urge to have sex or to have a sexual release, but you can't at the moment. So you do this routine of watching porn and just fap to it, and your reward is just an orgasm, and that's it. Your brain almost thinks that you had a real sex, but it's not real. You just watched some pictures on a screen and had sex with your hand. But this is the habit loop of this was the habit loop of mine and every other porn addict. The trigger saw something sexual, something that's inducing an sexual urge, and then the routine, whatever the routine is, watching porn, watching some nude pictures on another site, whatever, fapping, and then the reward to release an orgasm. So for me, the routine was always the same. I saw something on the internet, on my phone, on my computer that was sexually stimulating in nature. It was like a half-naked picture of a woman, and that got me. It struck me with a urge, with a desire to have a sexual release. Then I go into my favorite porn site, and I click on a video, and I fapped until I orgasmed. And that was pretty much it. So you're having this habit that is not serving you well. This habit is the habit of watching porn and fapping is just a means to escape from real life, a means to escape from your problems, to negate your emotional issues and problems, and just not deal with them. And when the time goes, those problems, those issues, they are unsolved and they just get bigger and bigger, and they become even harder to solve. It also just messes up your sexual health. It messes up your relationships. It messes up your brain. It takes away it pretty much takes away your soul and your energy, your will and your motivation to advance in life. That's what it did to me. I was, to my 14 to my 26 years of age, I was in this limbo world where I wasn't doing really anything. I was just cruising along the life while all of my other friends or classmates were just advancing in life, and I didn't do pretty much anything meaningful with my life. I was just always in the state of feeling bad all the time, and then trying to medicate that bad feeling with porn or with video games. The core thing about habit is to recognize the routine and change that routine, the thing that you're doing, that habit that you're doing, with a better habit, with a better routine that actually serves you and what actually gives you a different kind of reward, but it still gives you a reward. So, yeah, changing a habit is replacing a habit with a better habit. Find a better routine that gives you the same reward that you're seeking subconsciously. And what I mean by that? Because urges are not always sexual desires. And if you have watched porn regularly for like 2 to 5 years, porn has become a substitute to a lot of things. If you want to have a break from your everyday stress, you can watch porn and get pleasure. If you're feeling depression, anxiety, stress, You can pop up some porn and watch that to get pleasure and forget about those feelings that you had before. You can negate the bad feelings that you had during the day when you get home and again pop up some porn and pop out. It becomes, like I mentioned before, a means to escape from life problems and to get entertainment easily, get distracted easily. I'm not going to argue that young people have a bigger sexual desire and they're just exploring their new world that they're in. But while you train yourself, while you train your brain to solve your problems, to solve your emotional problems, to solve your feelings of loneliness, to solve your feelings of being bored, to solve your feelings of not doing great with your grades in school, if you solve your whatever issues that you're having with having a peak pleasure, then that's what it wants from you all the time. Your brain is just telling you, dude, I want some porn right now. I want to feel good. I don't know why. We don't care about that. I just want my porn. I want my orgasm. If you're not going to watch this, I'm going to be real pissed off. And you don't even know, eventually you don't even know, I didn't know why I am having this urge to watch porn, why I'm suddenly craving porn. It becomes like this. You don't even know why you're having an urge, but the urge is masked by your inner subconscious desires to solve your emotional problems. To sum this up, you have to find a better routines that gives you the same reward that you are seeking for subconsciously. Your subconscious desires are like the desire for communication, socialization, taking a rest, taking a break from work, tasks, studying, whatever. Being involved in some kind of an activity. You don't want to feel bored. Your subconscious desire can also be to address and fix your inner emotional issues and problems. So that's what you do. You essentially replace the habit of watching porn and fapping to a better habit that actually serves your life more healthily and in a meaningful way. So that is the step 2. You test out multiple routines that satisfies your inner desires that are hidden by a sexual urge and gives you a different reward. That's what I mentioned before. So what are those routines that solves your different subconscious desires? They're just so simple and easy. Like taking a pause from the task and going for a nap. Walking outside in a fresh air. Cooking yourself a delicious meal. Playing a video game. Be very careful with that. This is just another source of, another path of getting addicted to it. But is playing a video game better than watching porn? Yes. Calling and meeting up with a friend. Changing your environment, like going to another room and do some reading. Meditating for at least 10 minutes for having a peace of mind. Journaling and writing down your thoughts to address some of those feelings that you have inside, but you couldn't actually address them and reason with them because all you did was to negate those feelings and watch some porn. So how do you test out those routines? So let's say you have an urge. You got triggered. You have an urge to watch porn and to have an release, to have a good feeling. So the routine is watching porn and fapping, right? You replace that routine with something else from the routines that I just mentioned. And you do that routine instead of watching porn and fapping. Like the best one is always going out for a walk for at least 20-25 minutes after you're triggered. So you come back from that walk, you go to the place you were before where you got triggered, and you ask yourself, am I still feeling the craving to watch porn and jerk off? If the answer is yes, then you haven't solved the inner desire that you had. So you have to try a different routine next time, which could be to socialize, which could be to take a nap, which could be to cook yourself a delicious meal, which could be playing a little bit of video game, which could be meditating. And pretty soon you will find that the urge, the desire, the craving to watch porn isn't there anymore. If you do those experiments for like 1 to 2 weeks, and that's what it is. When you got triggered again, you did the other routine instead of the previous one from what I mentioned before, and you ask yourself, do I still feel the craving to watch porn and get off? And if the answer is no, then you have identified and you have solved your inner desire, your inner subconscious desire, and that is progress. You are starting to map out all of those inner desires that you have inside of you that you couldn't actually solve before, and now you are solving them in more meaningful and in a healthy way. Most of my desires were to avoid and to negate negative feelings like being bored, depressed, anxious, hurt, stressed, and overwhelmed. I wanted to escape those feelings, and I wanted to escape those feelings with porn, and I did that for many years. When I got to solve my feelings of being bored, my feelings of being stressed, my feelings of being hurt in a different way with a better routine that was followed by the trigger that is often just feeling hurt, but your brain just tells you, dude, you need to watch some porn right now because this is the medication that is the best for this thing. You have to just solve those pains differently. And that's what I started to do. And that's halfway there to eradicating the behavior. So the step 3, pinpoint your triggers and start changing your environment to eradicate the addiction. So what I mean by pinpointing your triggers is to, when you're triggered, you're not in the same location at all the time. You're not in the same time frame all the time. You're not in the same emotional state, right? There may be other people around you. There may be no people around you, and the events that happen before the trigger are also different. So how to pinpoint is to just write down the location, time, the emotion state, your emotion state, other people around you, and the event that happened before the trigger. So the location. Most of the times, I remember, I was in my room behind the desk, or just laying on my bed. The time was always, most of the times it was afternoon, or it was in the evening, where I was spending most of the times in a computer, and I was just feeling bored. These are the times where I were in home, in my when I had days off. That's something interesting. I never had an urge in work because I was busy doing things and being productive, right? But when I was bored, I eventually just got bored, and I wanted to entertain myself and to have some kind of a feeling. And if I want to have a feeling, it might as well be a big pleasure to, to take most out of the moment or whatever. The other people around you, are there another people or are you alone? I was alone in my room. And the last is the event before the trigger. So my events were always, I was scrolling on my phone or in my computer, and I came across a picture that was sexually stimulating, that was followed by an urge, and that is followed by a routine. Sorry, I have to take a drink. So when you pinpoint the triggers, the moments that you are most often carrying out with the habit, you are starting to see a pattern. You're starting to see a pattern of where you are most likely to engage with the habit. And then you can change your environment to lessen the triggers and try to avoid them at your best. So what I did was I was busy with tasks at that time. I started to do walks in afternoon. I started to get busy, like reading books, anything I could do to stay away from my phone or my computer, like reading or journaling or cleaning or cooking a meal for myself in the evenings. And I tried to, communicate with more people so that I don't feel lonely so much. And that's how you lessen your triggers. So let's say when you're triggered in just a couple of hours before noon. So what do you do about that? You change your environment right away. You don't let the mind wander and find more reasonings to engage with the habit, to engage with the same old routine again. Or you can just try to do a light exercise. Do some push-ups, then do some 5 to 10 minutes of meditation. You can go to a walk right away. You redirect your attention, your thinking of possibly the idea of watching porn and getting off. You switch that to doing something different. And the triggers, they come and they go. They stick with you for a longer time in the starting of your recovery, but eventually they will get shorter and they are not so frequent anymore. So what you can also do is just to watch some movies and not let the idea of watching porn keep festering in your mind. Just do any action that you can to disengage from those old patterns of carrying out with the habit. So we are now in the last step of having an action plan. So after identifying your subconscious desires, after you have pinpointed your triggers, by seeing the pattern, you can see what did you want when you got triggered. Mine was I wanted to redirect my attention away from something negative, away from depression, away from anxiety and stress, or just having a bad day. I wanted to redirect my attention to something else. I wanted to have a break from all the negativity. I wanted to have a break from having a bad day at work. I wanted to have a break from doing important, huge tasks. I wanted to repress my negative emotions. I didn't want to feel bad all the time. And I just wanted to be entertained. And then just write up those daily new action plans, those new routines that you have discovered that solved your inner desires in a more meaningful way. You just add them in your daily life, in your everyday life. You can just write down that every day I'm walking at least 20 minutes a day. Every day I try to communicate with a friend or spend time with them. Every day I'm just trying to be more busy with more meaningful tasks like self-improvement, like taking a new course or learning something new from books, right? You can try to cook yourself more healthy meals, doing a gym workout more often, and doing morning meditations and affirmation writings, or even slight morning workouts. And these are the things that you know that will solve your inner desires, and at the same time they will also give you a reward. There are rewards on every one of those daily activities that I mentioned before. And try to correct your environment as much as possible to lessen the probability of a triggering event to happen again. That means that you are not spending so much time in your phone before bedtime. You're charging your phone on a desk that is far away from you. You are not spending so much time in a computer when you are bored. You try to do something different that is entertaining, right? And the most important thing is to have a personal statement, a personal decision that you are not the man who watches porn and faps off to it. You're not the man who watches porn and pleasures himself while watching it. And you write that down as an affirmation. You write down the affirmation that every morning you can write this, that I'm not a man who watches porn and masturbates. And why? It becomes like the second voice or the third voice or the voice of reasoning, voice of truth, of conviction. It becomes a thing that keeps you safe in your moments of weakness. It keeps you from many, many relapses. It keeps you from falling back into the routine of watching porn. It keeps you, when you have a moment of weakness and you are triggered, you have this immense craving, you are tapping in your favorite porn site, you're clicking on it, And all of a sudden you have this voice inside of you that tells you, yo man, what are you doing? You're not the man who does this thing, right? So what are you doing? You should not be there. You're not the man who watches other people have sex and have sex with your hand. You're not that kind of man, so get yourself out of there. This is who we are. So that's what it is. And I can't mention how many times it had saved me from falling back and relapsing. It is just this amazing thing to have this voice of higher, righteousness. And it's amazing to have this deep personal clarification and the statement that you're not a person, you're not a man who watches porn. You're not the kind of man, and you can't really argue against that. When you're craving, you're giving yourself all of those reasons why we should watch porn right now, but you can't really argue against yourself. It's just the way you are, and there is no arguing against that. So let me summarize to get out of porn addiction. Step 1 is to document your habitual routine, identify the triggers, identify the routine, and the reward you're getting from it. Next is to test out multiple routines that solves your inner subconscious desires that are hidden as sexual urge, like we stated before, that an urge isn't always a sexual one. An urge is masked by something different. It is often masked by your subconscious desires to not feel lonely and not to feel bad all the time and to feel good about yourself, or to take break from work or from school or to take break from doing tasks, or to have a clarity of mind, or just have a whiff of fresh air, or to socialize and communicate. So after you determined and tested out different routines on your desires, on your subconscious desires, next you pinpoint your triggers using location, time, the emotion state you're having, the other people around you, and the events that happened before the trigger. And now you have a pattern. You can formulate a plan of the daily activities that you're now going to do to solve those subconscious desires and to push out the unserving, dreadful habit of watching porn. And your daily action plan now should probably consist of daily walking at least 20 minutes a day, more communication with friends, being busy with more meaningful tasks, cooking for yourself, going for gym, doing some workouts, meditations in the mornings, affirmation writings, and maybe consider just doing more entertaining a video game. But be very careful with that. And remember also that video game is better than watching porn. And eventually when you're free from porn, you can use the same thing to get away from playing video games. Because video games are just as addictive and just as time wasting and as every other modern addiction. These are the steps that I use to cut out porn, to cut out the addiction that I had for more than 10 years. And I hope you can use those steps as well. Stay sharp and stay aware. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more, I also have a link where you can read more about the habit formation and how it influences us.